Welcome, everyone, to the Ashland Planning Board meeting for June 9th, 2022. We do have various public hearings on the schedule this evening, but those public hearings, including 501 Pond Street, 225 Pond Street, and 100 Chestnut Street, are all being continued due to some of them are currently going before the Design Review Committee, or awaiting third-party review. So those things will be continued. We don't have a date yet, but at least to the next planning board meeting. So if you're tuning in to see those are being continued this evening. Instead, we will be going into executive session. Before I entertain a motion to go into executive session, I would like to clarify that the executive session will not be for the purpose of collective bargaining. Can I continue, Peter, or do we have the bases covered?
Nope, you just continue right off of that, and then we'll have to do a roll call vote. And then before we log off, go into executive session, Tricia, we're just going to have to mention that the board will reconvene in open session and link back and use, obviously, the Zoom meeting for that. Just
remind me if I forget anything.
Okay.
All right. In that case, I will make a motion. I move pursuant to GL 30A, Section 21A3, that the board go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, namely NextGrid Inc. versus Planning Board of Ashland, 22 Miss 00275. As the chair, I have determined that the public discussion of which will have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board. Can I have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
And we will need a roll call vote, starting with Anna.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Rona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
McLean, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. We will be coming back into open session after the executive session is complete. I'll get it out eventually.
Before that, just planning board members, I did send out a separate executive session link. So I'm going to jump off, open that meeting up, and then I'll let everyone in.
Okay.
So I will see you in a
few
few.
there.
So we would then come back to this after.
Correct. This meeting's actually going to stay open, Anna. So this public meeting is going to stay open, and Emma's going to monitor that waiting room, and that's why we have that shared screen. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Because we never left our meet, well, we went into executive session, but we never closed this meeting. We just stepped aside.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, we are restreaming and ready to go whenever you guys are.
All right, so do we need a countdown or we're just on?
No, we are on.
Okay, thank you. All right, for the people that have joined or stuck with us here, we are back in open session. The next item on our agenda, the next few items are on our agenda are continued, so we'll be going through these a little bit quickly. Next on the agenda is item 3. This is the 225 Pond Street special permit and site plan review. That is the adding of a drive-through to McDonald's. This is being continued because we have just received the third-party review and haven't had a time to go through it yet. Is that right, Peter?
Yes, that is correct. So
Yeah.
plenty of board members, as everyone knows, the third-party review came back on Friday, and the applicant was in contact with me earlier in the week. And within a discussion, they had to take some of the edits that were proposed within our third-party review back to their client and change some as our third-party review letter would like to change some of the elements regarding the plan. So the engineering firm, Board Engineering, are right now is working through that letter. And obviously they're in communication with their clients. So with that said, at this point, they have asked for continuance to the next meeting, which is going to be on June 23rd, starting at 7:15.
Okay, I will.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, question.
So if a planning board member has either questions or comments related to that third-party review, do we wait till they come back, or how does that handle? Or do we send them in to Peter to send them on?
Yeah, I would send them to me, Catherine, and then I will take a look at them, and then I'll either try to reach out to the applicant and or reach out to a third-party review engineer and try to get the best answer for you to hopefully streamline that process.
Thank you.
And any other questions on that process? Okay, then I will make a motion that 225 Pond Street special permit and site plan review is continued to our next meeting on June 23rd at 7:15. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
And a roll call vote?
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Kevin McLean, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that passes 500. Going on to item 4, this is the continued public hearing for 100 Chestnut Street site plan review. This project is currently still in front of Design Review Committee, and we are still awaiting, or at least we're still awaiting feedback from Design Review Committee, and we are also still waiting for the third-party review to be completed. Is that right, Peter?
That is correct. So again, our third-party review having sending them 3 site plans and obviously other work they have in their office, they were backed up, and so they were going to start the review of this site, 100 Chestnut Street, this week, and they have not gotten a letter and a report back to me and to the office. In addition, I would say is that the applicant met the design review committee. I know they're meeting again with the design review committee at the next meeting, and so no comments have been issued by the design review committee to the planning board. So at this point, with these awaiting items, the best case for the planning board was to it would be to continue the case as requested by the applicant.
Any questions on this item by the board? Okay. Then I'll make a motion to continue 100 Chestnut Street site plan review to our next meeting, June 23rd at 7:15.
I'll second it.
Okay, lots of seconds. Roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Kevin McLean, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. Passes 500. Number 5, 501 Pond Street special permit and site plan review. This again, we are awaiting design review committee. We are awaiting third-party review. And so I think, Peter, you already have the request for the continuance.
Mhm.
So does anyone have any questions on that?
Just,
And I assume you will not be voting?
Yep, I'm gonna abstain. Obviously, I cannot vote on either the motion to continue, so I'll just be quiet. I don't think I need to step out for this.
no,
I
you
don't
do
think
not.
so.
This is
We're
very
not
similar
discussing.
to
I was just
501
joking.
to 100 Chestnut Street, waiting for the site plan review, waiting for peer review, waiting for design review committee. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, on that note, I will make a motion to continue 501 Pond Street special permit and site plan review to June 23rd at 7:15 p.m.
I'll second that.
And roll call vote, starting with you, Marcelo.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Kevin McLean, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. That passes 4-0-1. And now we're actually on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the continued public hearing for 320 Pond Street site plan review. This is the Mozzie tent project. And I believe everyone was sent a preliminary conditions of approval. Peter, can you just summarize where we are with this one?
Sure. So at this point, the planning board did hear this case at the last meeting, and I believe that the planning board agreed to the parameters that were being presented by the applicant. And so therefore I went ahead and drafted a decision, which was circulated to the planning board members. And this decision obviously would allow for a temporary tent to be developed and/or placed in the front parking lot of Mozzie no longer than 36 months, commencing at the date of the filing of the decision with the town clerk. So therefore, they would allow the tent to be developed, installed up until, if approved, I would say June of 2024. No, 2023. For 3 years. I also was able to go out to the site and I took pictures of the site, and I was able to share those pictures with all planning board members just to get a better idea of what is going on. And also as element, as the applicant stated in their application, the tent would be installed in April and it would be taken down in October. Obviously with the seasons of change. So I did put those within the decision and obviously circulated. I do want to note Catherine Jersey, our planning board member, she did send me over a memorandum, which is dated August 12, 2020. And it was regards for guidance of safety considerations for schools utilizing temporary tents. There are some building code elements that Catherine has sent over. However, I have spoken with the building commissioner. He is aware of these building codes, and I am also happy to put those specifically within the decision if requested by the planning board. So Tricia, that is where we stand currently.
Let me first ask, does the applicant have anything they want to add at this time? Anything new that you wanted us to know?
Anything new? No. Proceed as we were before.
And before we go further, I do want to open it up to public comment. We didn't take public comments just on this before. I don't think anyone had their hand up asking to speak, but I didn't formally ask for public comment. So if there is any public comment, please feel free to raise your hand and you can have an opportunity to speak. Otherwise, are there any other comments from the planning board before we kind of discuss this more, discuss the conditions more in more detail? Okay. Peter, if you can just keep an eye out if any hands do go up. For the condition, the information that Kate presented about Mass General Law in this case, is this, Kate, maybe you can explain it a little bit more. I was looking at it about temporary structures. What is your concern of something that we're missing here?
I did send in several comments, so I believe that the temporary structure is under the control of the building commissioner. We talked about that last time. So it's basically some wording. So it should, I believe, not be up for 36 months. And I know the applicant wasn't intending that, but I think it is a particular time period of 180 days. So if you put it up April 30th and you take it down October, whatever, you're 180 days, right? And I don't think the planning board needs to do anything more detailed than say it's within up to those 36 months in accordance with the rules enforced by the building commissioner or something.
Kathy, I'm not sure I agree with that interpretation. In general, it's 780 CMR, and the difference between a fixed building and a temporary structure, at least the ones I've worked with, I don't know, maybe these cases different, but it's really the implications of the type of foundations that they're required to have and the forces that they need to withstand, because a structure that's going to stay for a long time has to withstand certain type of forces, whereas a temporary one can be displaced by those forces like winds or hurricanes or what have you. I'm not sure. I mean, any erection of any structure, whether it's light or heavy, is still under the jurisdiction of the building commissioner of the administration of Chapter 1. So I'm not sure how these would be different. Or I could be mistaken, but I'm just not aware of the difference.
Well, I cannot say the one I found was for temporary tents for schools, but this is not a temporary tent for schools, temporary tent for a restaurant. And it does mention the 180 days.
The 180 days is mentioned in the International Building Code, kind of in the same location, Section 108, temporary uses and structures. But I'm wondering about it too, because it says that the building official is authorized to permit for temporary structures and temporary uses, and that it's limited for 180 days. But I'm wondering, does that mean that those temporary structures don't need to go before the planning board? Like he can issue those permits, say someone's having a wedding or whatever it is, without authorization from the planning board or any other bigger board, versus what we're doing is, and so I'm reading it, and I'm not sure I'm correct at all. I'm reading it as the building official is under some restrictions about the length of time he or she can allow, but those restrictions don't necessarily relate to the planning board and what we can or cannot allow. I am not sure about that interpretation, but it seemed to me be putting restrictions on what the building official can do, but not necessarily, I don't know about what the planning board can do.
So can I just chime in real quick? So I talked to the building commissioner, Doug Scott, and we kind of talked this over a little bit. And what my interpretation was from Doug is that it is correct. The tent permit can only be issued for 180 days. And so obviously the owner, Zach over Mozzie, number one, they're going to have a tent on their site. So they're going to have to, number one, every season annually, which we put a condition in, they're going to have to come in and actually pull a tent permit. The building official needs to go out and inspect that tent, right? Secondly, after the lapse of 180 days, therefore, the applicant, Mozzie, is going to have to recertify with a new tent permit for $50 to the town of Ashland and pull another tent permit. And therefore, the building commissioner is going to have to go out there for an additional inspection. That is what would theoretically happen regarding the 180 days. Just counting the days from April to October, if you went from April 1st to October 31st, that is 234 days. So in that instance, around August, if that August 1st, correct? around Labor Day of every season, the applicant would therefore have to be responsible to come back in and reapply for a new tent permit. The town of Ashland therefore has to go up and inspect that tent to make sure everything is verified and is up to par. That's what my interpretation was through conversation with Doug Scott.
So, okay, so basically, we can make the approval for the 3 years, the 36 months, but the tent itself comes for safety issues, for inspection issues, is applied for each year. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes. So every year, the applicant, number one, it's good for 36 months. However, the tent will be installed from April to October, as stated within the application. So that would be a condition in our findings. And then annually, every year, the applicant will be responsible for pulling a tent permit and filing the tent permit, which is only good for 180 days. Upon that lapse of 180 days, the applicant therefore has to file for a new tent permit. And therefore, the town has to go out and inspect.
Okay. Okay. So I think I'm trying to find the most current document here. I think did you add in Kate's comments that made sure that was clear?
I didn't have time today, but I want to discuss it first with everybody.
Okay. Is that something that we can bring up and take care of tonight, where the change is simple enough that we can do that?
Yeah, we can do that, or I can try to type it out tomorrow and circulate it, and then we can kind of, upon approval, we could therefore come in and sign the decision. It's up to whatever the board wants to do. Okay,
so that would be, so that it would potentially being, given that the changes, unless anyone had any other changes, the changes are specifically about the tent permit being applied for each year. Besides that, the conditions were still in place. So we could vote on those conditions with the addition of the clarification of the building permit for each 180-day portion.
I have another comment, I guess, to talk about on the very first paragraph. So it says, the last sentence, seeking site plan approval for the temporary installation of a commercial tent. And if I recall, the application actually said permanent. So I think we just have to work on the wording a little bit to make sure that there's not left a conflict where the application says permanent, but our decision is saying it was for temporary.
Yeah, how does that work, Peter? The application did say permanent, but I think soon after it kind of got modified, though I didn't see an official document about it being modified.
You know what? I think that was just a typo from the applicant, and actually Zach speaking, I believe, through the conversations. And I believe we talked about it at the last meeting that, what you're going for and applying for is a temporary tent. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
However, we don't want a written thing that's conflict, I would think.
So are you afraid that because the application is written one way, even though it's clear in the approval, that would cause a problem?
No, I'm wording where it says the application asked for a temporary in the very first paragraph. After the SV expansion LLC.
Okay, so you would have changed that to say
permanent,
though the application was applying for a permanent installation of a commercial tent. It was, I don't know, what would we say, Peter? It was informally changed or informally?
Yeah, I can add another sentence to say within the public hearing process, the applicant had altered and or amended the term permanent to temporary, with the aspiration of a 36-month permit.
Okay.
And is that agreeable to the applicant?
Yes, it is.
I have some other comments if that's okay, or
No, please.
No,
run
we
through 'em.
should discuss them.
okay. It's on page 3, item E. Maximize open space retention, finding the applicant has proposed an outdoor seating area that will expand the outdoor seating options for patrons of Mozzie and add life and vitality in the spring, summer, fall to otherwise bleak parking areas. And I would say a parking area is not open space, so I propose that we say it's not applicable.
Yeah, I don't, I'm fine with that either way, I guess. I don't,
I'm okay with that change. Peter, is there any way you could share, like, can we, is there a way to share a screen just so we're all looking at the same thing? Because I'm
sorry. Yeah, give me a second.
no, that's okay. I think it just makes it a little bit easier if that's all right with everybody.
Yeah, no problem.
It was in an email from Emma on June 6th, if you're hunting.
Yeah, no, I gotta. I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, I'll find it. It's okay.
No, I got it right. Just give me a second. I got to. I'm digging through I dig right through the live document if there's any changes. So. All right, can everyone see it?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Just to point out, I think Catherine mentioned the word temporary, so this gets changed to permanent. But going back to item, I believe E, right here, and I can just highlight it in gray. Catherine, that's what you were talking about?
Yeah, so our finding is it's maximizing open space, and a parking lot isn't open space. So I think we should be clear and just say that the open space isn't applicable to this permit.
So you want to add which sentence?
I just want the finding saying that open space is not applicable because a parking lot is not open space. That's what we're talking about here. We're taking the parking lot and we're using it as a patio. So neither of those are open space.
Okay. So you're thinking just changing the heading of the paragraph.
The finding would be, we find that this doesn't deal with open space or it's not applicable.
yeah, we can't change the heading because that's right out of the bylaw.
Correct.
I would just say the planning board finds the.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I was trying to look in the bylaws to see what our definition was of open space, but I can't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Since that's not what we're doing. Yep, I get it now.
On page 4, item K. Says the site plan shall comply with all zoning requirements for parking, loading, signage. Finding the site plan complies with all relevant requirements for parking, loading, signage, dimensions, environmental performance standards. And if it's taking away parking, do we know it complies? And then also our new environmental performance is like, it's you wouldn't be able to have all that stormwater running off the parking lot. So I think we just have to clean up that as well.
I think we determined that they still have enough parking spaces, and I don't think they're blocking off any catch basins, right? So
Yeah, I think the runoff is not modified at all. I think we asked that about last meeting. Is that right, Kevin? We thought that the pavement was going to remain. It's going to remain as is.
That's correct.
as far as I remember.
But this is, don't forget, it's actually a new site plan, though it's only over this temporary tent, and this will be filed. So if we're not very clear, you're sort of approving the conditions, which I agree we are. We're not asking them to add, deal with permeable paving and stormwater runoff. But given that this is actually a new site plan, that's the way this is written, we have to be very careful. Does it comply with parking? Does anyone know that before we say that?
I think when you factor in the entire parcel, and the entire shopping plaza, then yes, and that it does comply with all parking requirements.
But that parking is not completely under Mozzie's control with the lease, correct? That's like shared overflow parking. So again, I believe we have to be careful about how we write this.
Okay.
So if some other use comes into that plaza within the 3 years and takes the parking, now we don't know. I just simply want to be careful about how it's worded.
Okay, so would you want me to, how would you like me to edit this?
Well, I think, if we said it complies with all relevant zoning requirements for parking, loading, signage, environmental performance standards, what are those? Because again, I don't think it complies with our current stormwater runoff. So you can say as the situation as of the date, it complies with parking as per their lease. I haven't seen their lease, but I believe them. Some bookends around that because that's very open-ended.
Okay. I can try to write something up and then I'll send it off to the board if that's the best. I think for me to draft it now would probably be difficult. But I understand what you're saying.
Maybe it would just be something like that. There is ample additional parking available in the adjacent lot, and no significant changes are made to the drainage from an existing working condition or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And on page, I think it's about the 36 months again, but I think it's fine if under the decision, if it needs to refer again to how that's all permitted or maybe not. It's on page 4. Not the period, not a temporary time period not to exceed 36 months. I think if the other one's clarified, we're probably fine not repeating something there, but maybe not.
Sometimes we repeat ourselves in decisions.
Yeah, then maybe it should repeat there. I think that's it on my comments.
Yeah, I had already reviewed it. So my comments are already my changes are already embedded in there. Did anyone else have any other comments?
I had 2 quick ones. On page 6, number 4, it's talking about 2 years, and I'm not positive what we're saying 2 years to.
Oh, that's the site plan should lapse, and so that typically, in my eyes, this is like a boilerplate one, Kevin. That if and this is a boilerplate one for site plan. So if someone gets a permit and then doesn't take any action for 2 years,
okay,
then this lapse. So
as long as they're using it, you don't need to come back to us before the 3rd year.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one was page 2, number 2. I think this came from TJ's, but this time they actually have Jersey Barrier style
Yeah,
not
this is
my Concrete Dead Men or Mafia Blood.
no. So you want
They have
Jersey?
water-filled Jersey barriers.
Okay.
You know, I noted that, but I'm like, I don't know what to change it to, so I'm just gonna leave it and.
I want to make sure you're on your toes, Kevin. And they're not low.
Yeah, so you could probably get rid of the whole parentheses by water-filled Jersey barrier, water-filled Jersey barriers covered with screening or an alternate material, because that's what they have. Right. They're plastic.
Okay. Perfect.
And recommendation to Mozzie, don't forget to drain them in the winter or they will break.
Yeah.
I think you can put like alcohol or salt in there or something to get away with it. But.
You need a liquor license for that, Kevin.
There are tricks.
So are there any further comments on the approval? Because then I would be asking if people are comfortable with approving taking a vote on the document here. Peter will complete the edits into a final form. Everyone will have a chance to read them, and then if it's satisfactory, then we can proceed to just signing. Any discomfort with that, given the level of changes?
How does that work? We're voting with the changes discussed. That's what we're actually voting on. Yeah,
what we do sometimes when the changes are relevant, but in a way minor, is that we will approve it with the changes as described, but the final form of it, Peter will create a final form. He'll email it out. If it looks good, we just all come in and sign. If it doesn't, we can rediscuss it.
Yeah, so typically, just for the sake of time, obviously, I'll make the edits. I'll send this back out to everybody for everyone to review. And therefore, if there's any other changes or if there's other wording that I miss or misinterpret, I would just say email me directly and I can clarify those issues and then send them back out to the board. Just so we're not, it just kind of moves the process along a bit quicker.
I'm okay with that in light of the changes we made today.
Me too.
Okay. Then I think I still need to close the public hearing. Am I right, Peter?
That is correct.
All right. Any other final questions, comments from anyone out there? Otherwise, I will make a motion to close the public hearing for, I want to say Mozzie, close the public hearing for 320 Pond Street site plan review. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And a roll call vote?
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
McLean, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So I assume there's no further discussion amongst the board, as we kind of already did that part. So I will make a motion that we approve the 320 Pond Street site plan review. Sorry, approve the 320 Pond Street site plan review, including those changes in the approval that were discussed tonight and which we will be reviewing individually before signing the document. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, and then a roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
McLean, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that is 500. Peter will be looking for that from you, and we'll look through that final verbiage and then go forward.
Perfect. I'll take care of that. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly. I'll be in touch.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, next on our agenda is 12 Pond Street. This was going to be a discussion of the colors on 12 Pond Street. Peter emailed out some materials. There were also materials, printed materials to pick up. I have requested this item to be, it's not a public hearing, so we're not officially continuing it or opening it or anything like that. But these were kind of remaining issues to try to get 12 Pond Street moving again. They've been sitting on the table a long time. And as much as I want to get it moving again, the only other member of the board that was a part of the 12 Pond Street colors, I don't even remember if Deepa was a part of the building itself, but is Deepa, who is not here tonight. So I very much hesitate kind of getting into a big discussion about colors on that building when I'm the only one that has been involved on the board with that building. So I would like to postpone that discussion to the 23rd, or when, yeah, likely to the 23rd, I guess. Our agenda is starting to get very full there as well. But we can move it. It's not a public hearing. We can move it out if we need to. Any comments on that?
I will be recusing myself, so I just will not even vote on this issue, just to make it simple for everyone.
Okay,
I'm an abutter to 12 Pond Street. Sorry,
but I was going to say, do people know that you're a butter to that project? So.
Can you confirm what I mean, I was not part of any of these discussions. So what is I mean, that building is almost finished. And so what is the color vote? I just don't understand.
There's been a long, there was, over the course of many meetings, the exterior of the project really didn't go as shown on the drawings. We had a problem with the architect on the project would fairly regularly show us renderings that just did not accurately reflect the building. Colors were dropped off that didn't accurately reflect what was on the renderings. It was just multiple times of not being able to discuss this project because the renderings and the colors never matched what was built on the site. And so it became very hard to discuss. And so finally, I don't even remember when this site meeting was. It was when Joe was still here. We had decided to have a mock-up. Actually, Charlie Zamuto was going to mock up some of the brick. Then he had a lot of trouble getting the brick because of COVID. And the whole thing kind of came to a standstill. So in an effort to try to get that project completed instead of just sitting there, these colors have been submitted. There's also a brick sample that has been submitted of a different brick than the one he could not get. And so I think really it's about, for board members to, if you can, to take the time to go out and look at the building in person, choose a nice day, look at the renderings that are before you, what the building is doing now, and kind of what these choices are. Mr. Zamuto has offered to paint the building, no matter what the siding colors are now, he has offered to paint the building whatever colors we approve. So we are just looking to try to choose what those colors are. So it's kind of like, well, where do we go from here? How do we wrap this? How do we get this thing wrapped up? It has been an arduous process.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, well said, Tricia. I couldn't, everything. It goes back to the applicant having to submit, obviously, the finished renderings and for this board's approval, and it's just a matter of rocking up that conversation, that condition within that within the approval process.
Kathy, I see your hand up. Do you have a question or a comment relative to 12 Pond Street?
I'm gonna leave the meeting if there's actually gonna be discussions, because I do want to recuse. I thought we were just moving on. So can I leave and you just call me back in when we're done with this?
I'm not sure Kathy is actually.
Oh, okay. But I do want to not recuse and sit in the room. I want to follow.
I think I want to tell Kathy that we're not discussing at this time. So
I just have a simple question, and it regards the facade. And
if it's a design question, I would rather it wait until we actually discuss the project versus just a history of the project, or
not a history.
Okay.
It has to do with something that I'm fairly certain design review asked them to do, which is to hide all their venting. And they said they would hide it in architectural features. And I actually don't know if that made it into any planning board decision at all, which is why I'm asking about it. And I would have to go back through the meeting minutes that we have on that project and look for the reference to it.
If you can do that, and if you find something and can send it to Peter, then we can take that into account at perhaps at our next meeting.
When do you think you're going to discuss it? Do you have any idea?
Well, all I can say is that the 23rd is the next meeting. It's getting quite overloaded again with public hearings, but we never know if some of those will get continued. So we tend to kind of put things on the next meeting and resolve whatever we can.
Okay. It might be helpful if you put it off till July, and I might have time to start doing the research on it, because I'm a little overloaded myself. That's all. But thank you.
Okay.
All right. So, yes, I'm sorry.
All right. So, like I said, I don't think this requires a vote of any kind because it's not a public hearing. Is that right, Peter?
Correct. So but we'll move it to the next meeting. The number one thing is I wanted the planning board members to know this is out there. It's Element. You know, the renderings are up online. I have one more hard set of color renderings in the office. If anybody wants to stop by and pick them up, I know a couple of you have, and we've circulated a couple out. So I just want to make sure the material is out there and we're having a conversation for the next meeting.
And I also could probably go through, between Peter and I, we could go through and make the relevant meeting minutes available for the end part of that project, not for the whole project, but the end part that had to do with the colors and how we got to kind of this part, if that's helpful to anyone. It's not entirely relevant, but if someone wants the history, reading those portions of the meeting minutes would probably help that. So I can do a little digging and come up with that list. All right. So on that note, we will go on to item 9. This is reports from board members and town planner.
Oh, there's one more. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, the lot release. Sorry,
yeah,
I missed it.
I'm going to take this one.
Yep, go ahead.
So the town, this is a lot release request for lot 38 on Apple Ridge subdivision number 3. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick. This is a Apple Ridge subdivision. Apple Ridge number 3 subdivision. This is lot 38 right now, which is right here. Scroll down a little bit. This plan was approved back in 1996 by the Ashland Planning Board, and this subdivision created Pennock Winesap Road, Pennock and Winesap Road. And this is part of the Apple Ridge 1, Apple Ridge 2, obviously Apple Ridge 3 different subdivision. This property is for sale right now, and the seller, the buyer has done a title research on the property. And it comes back that the original lot release that was signed by the planning board, which I'm also going to pull up and show everybody, which dates back to June 5th of 1997, was never recorded at the Middlesex Registry of Deeds. So this lot, can everyone see my screen right now? This lot was known as 38 Pennock Road. Excuse me. These were the lots designated on shown plan as 9, 8, 37, and 38, which would therefore be on Pennock Road. This does not get recorded at the registry of deeds, the Middlesex Registry of Deeds. So therefore, because this was signed in 1997, the attorney representing the buyer of the property has asked the planning board to re-release this property within a lot release from the original subdivision covenant for the sale of this property to move forward. So I know we've done this a couple months ago for another property. This does come up from time to time. It's an administrative item in my eyes. However, it does take the signature of the planning board or a majority of the planning board to release those lots. Through an attorney representing a buyer of the subdivision, they are asking the planning board to re-release lot 38 within, Apple Ridge subdivision, as shown on the recorded plans as presented tonight. Does anybody have any questions?
I do. So this only happens sometimes. And is that just because somebody has a better title company and it should happen all the time? Or is there something, well, maybe there's not going to be more subdivisions in Ashland. It's kind of that, but is there something we can do on future decisions to make sure this doesn't come up?
So this is it's an administrative item that is always under the responsibility of completion by the developer. But the developer who signs a covenant to the town of Ashland for the development of that roadway comes back to the planning board and asks for lot releases so they can build building permits. The lot release should have been recorded at the registry of deeds. If the lot release was recorded at the registry of deeds in 1997, this is not an issue. So what the issue is here is that the developer failed to record the lot release, and now the title company doing the examination is saying the covenant that was signed by the original developer is still valid because of this technical administrative issue that the developer failed to record this document. This really has nothing to do with the planning board per se, or responsibility of the planning board. This is the responsibility of the developer. And I would actually say it is that the building office should always request recording verification before the actual building. In this case, it's actually when the building permits are issued. So the planning boards typically issue the lot release, it gets recorded. That lot release recording evidence should be submitted to the building office before the building permit and/or really the occupancy permit would ever be issued. But 1997, these things come up over time. And it's just really an administrative item. As everyone knows, Pennock Road has been built. It's been actually taken by the town, so it's now a town-owned property, town-owned road. And really, this is, like I said, an administrative item.
Peter, I have just two questions about it. I'm just curious to know, and is it something that you might follow up on, that there was 4 lots listed on that release? It'd be interesting to know if the other 3 lots were never recorded either. And so if this might come back to haunt us, it might just be worth knowing if those other 3 lots were recorded or not recorded, and we might just take care of it at some time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So in my experience, it come back to haunt us. Really, I think it really depends on the title company. You know, the title company or the attorneys representing the buyer may say, you know what, Pine Sap Road, doesn't have to be, Road A has been taken by the town to adopt the roadway. This is a moot point, right? However, some title examination companies and some attorneys have a different perspective. that the covenant is still valid because this one discrepancy, if that is not recorded. I can go back and look, not a big deal, but obviously this at this point, due to the parties involved, may have the chance of holding up the real estate transaction.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and coming back to Hannes was the wrong expression, but just if we know there's 3 other lots that were never recorded, is it just easy for us to record them and then clean up the paperwork where someone in 1997 didn't? That was just a question. I don't know if it's something that we do now or not. The second question I have is that I looked at this property, the property card for this property, and I noted that it's been sold since its original owner. So is there just a reason why didn't it come up before when it was sold previously? Is it just?
It's the attorney doing the title record.
Okay.
That's really what it comes down to. You know,
someone went deeper than some other attorney, and
they went deeper.
Okay.
You know, they raised a red flag on it. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I was just curious. All right, any other questions about the lot release? Okay, then I will make a motion to re-release. Is that the term?
It would be a re-release, yes.
Re-release lot 38 of Apple Ridge subdivision.
I'll second it.
And a roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Plain aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that is taken care of. Okay, now going on to the reports from board members and the town planner. And just to note that this list is not, we don't necessarily have updates on these things tonight. We just decided it would be good to keep track of them kind of as old business on our agendas. And when we do have updates and one comes off, then that's great, but at least we're kind of keeping track of these things that we've talked about in the past or that people are bringing up new. So that's what the list is. And I guess we'll just start from the beginning. I think this was originally a question just from Kate, maybe as our newest member on the board. I think Peter is the one to answer that one.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh, so Peter, we're just at letter A on the reports, board members and town planner, public communication, how emails from the public are responded to and forwarded. That was a question I've asked over time too, about the best way that we do that when obviously emails to Ashland Planning Board, whatever it is, come to all of us, and we don't want to send out 7 or 8 different answers, right? So
I think from my standpoint, and I think I've stated it a couple of times at the meetings, it really depends on the topic. It depends on what's going on, and it really kind of depends on the issue. If it is a opinion on a project, I was to reply all, and I'll reply all to say that your email has been accepted by the planning office and it will be presented as a public comment. Number one. However, if it is a topic that's asking a pointed question, and I do feel a need to respond. However, I don't think it's necessary that all planning board members are CC'd. I think I will do that. Sometimes I'll also CC Trisha as chair, just so she's kept in the loop or kept abreast of the situation. I think in my eyes, it really comes down to I know everyone has busy lives, and I don't, and we get a lot of emails. I get a lot of emails, and I do not want to flood everyone's email box with back and forth. Nor do I want to get the board into a situation where we are in violation of the public record into a public
open meeting law.
open meeting law violations. And so once you do CC everybody and you get into anything, any back and forth on projects, that is a violation of public meeting law, open meeting law, excuse me. So I think I've always used it as a judgment call, and I try to use my best judgment. If the board wants to come up with a process and or a procedure, I'm happy to start to work on something of that nature. However, we've had a few emails and for the big, for the emails about, projects, I'll save them, I'll print them, I'll file them, and I'll let them know that they've been entered as part of the public record.
I think that the only comment I've heard about this recently was just, and I'm not sure, how much difference it makes, that when we get a letter that's really, that someone has put time into to write a longer letter on a certain topic, say 100 Chestnut Street, that maybe those letters can be acknowledged in the meeting. I mean, we get them, we get a copy of them, but saying, we've received letters from, Joe Smith and Jane Doe and on this topic. But I don't know, I don't know what else we do, what, if anything, if anyone has an opinion about what we do, beyond that.
I mean, one thought I had is how we talked about is the purpose of a clerk for our board, and it's sort of an outdated position. We could reinvent what that means. And a clerk could be a bit of an administrative response team on behalf of the planning board, where speaking on our behalf, we could assign a clerk on this board who would respond and say, listen, I'm the clerk. Part of my role is to acknowledge the receipt of this. Thank you for being heard. Thank you for sharing your input with us. It's being added to the agenda for our next discussion of public comment, something like that, so that we have an appointee, if you will, from this board who can do that for us, so that obviously Peter and Emma have their own processes that they follow, which are important, and we should honor those, but they are busy and they do many, many things. And this will give us as a board a sense of comfort that we are being polite to the public, that we're engaged with the public. I don't think it's appropriate for the clerk to take a position and to say, I agree with you or I disagree with you, unless somebody's writing to them personally. Because if it comes to the whole board and we're responding as a clerk on behalf of the entire board, we should just say, I'm the clerk, I'm responding on behalf of the entire board, thank you. If we want to share an opinion individually, we can say, I'm writing to you as a member and I agree with you. And that can be one-on-one with the member of the public. But, that's really kind of everyone's own business, what they do as a public official. But I guess what I'm suggesting is we could choose to do the clerk response on behalf of the whole board as a civility to the public.
I understand that, Anna, but I don't know. It's kind of a distinction without a difference. I don't know, what is the process broken? And I've seen the responses. Peter always responds to people acknowledging the receipt, and the things that get brought up we discuss at the meetings, and people can also speak at the meetings when the discussion is open. I mean, creating a position to doing the same thing, I just don't see the value personally.
So I have one thing, before I was on the board, right, as a member of the public, if I wrote to the board, but I get an answer from the town planner, I don't still know the board always heard me versus they physically got the email. They're two separate things. And I know in the past, and that's not say I have sent emails and not received any response. So I think, I personally have experience, and I'd like to make sure we have a process we're happy with. And if our process that the public understands that the town planner responding, I think that may cover part of that. But I think we have a little ways to go to have a professional process, I guess, in my opinion. not far from what everyone's saying, but some.
Wasn't that the objective of creating the planning board web, email? I think this was discussed in one retreat. We always get the emails that people send to the planning board. I mean, that can be made clear to the public. We read them all. That's not changing, right?
Yeah, I don't know if Kate, if you're saying it would make it would make a difference to you, even if it's the exact same response that Peter would give, because as Anna said, it has to be extremely neutral because you can't speak for 5 members of the board. But it would maybe carry more weight if it was coming from, Tricia Kendall, clerk, Ashland Planning Board versus Peter Matchek, town planner. Would you think that would make a difference, or?
I think that, or the planning board had a published policy that our emails will be responded from the town planner, but at least people know that. Because the town planner isn't the planning board, right? So that's, I guess, they're really not, and they are separate, and there's duties that overlap. So I guess that's the part I'd like to iron out.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to figure out what's the specific means to do that. If you can't force members of the board, obviously, to read your email. I mean, we do. I read them all. I bet everyone here reads them all. And we can't necessarily read out loud all letters to the planning board, given the length of our meetings, right? That wouldn't be appropriate either. And that's why we have public comment, so people can speak up, So, I guess but I think this does fit in, this whole public communication does fit in what we've had as an agenda item since we started our retreats. We've had this on the agenda about public communication. So it's really trying to understand, and maybe we don't resolve it tonight. I'm not saying that we need to do that, but to just be thinking about what is that official policy about how things are responded to that checks the right boxes for someone writing in without creating an undue burden on either the planning board members or on our meetings, which are already full.
I mean, what I'll say is it's a matter of capacity. If there was someone on this board who wants to step up and attempt to draft kind of a standard response that would go from a clerk and wants to step into the clerk's position, I would support it. I'm certainly not volunteering for it. I just think it's a good way for us to serve the public. And I will, just to clarify, I have responded directly as my own voice, my own kind of membership, where I have seen a public comment and I'll write back and I'll say, thank you for your thoughts. And I may even share an opinion. I've done that. And as long as you don't include the whole board, we're not violating anything, but I can't do that with every single email. I just don't have the time. I'll read, but I'm not necessarily going to respond to everything. And what I look for is how do I phrase it the right way? I look for a complex, layered response where I feel like the public is so deeply engaged that not to respond as a planning board member kind of strikes me as wrong. So I've done it in those situations. And I do wonder sometimes if that's better coming from the board directly. And we don't have time to do it, to discuss it every single meeting. We would have far longer meetings if we had like a public comment section. So it's just worth thinking about. If someone on the board is willing to play that role, I think it will make us a very responsive board.
Yeah, and I think this is obviously, I know from sessions we've had previously, Kate, that this is an important issue to you, and it's important an issue to everyone. But I can also tell you that there is, given that, well, you were here, right, that no one wanted to step into the position of clerk because no one else has the capacity. So if that's something you want to think about what that position could be and what it could become, we are definitely not going to vote on anything here, but give it some thought, because no one else is going to be stepping into it.
I would definitely consider that, but I don't want to do something on my own. I mean, I want the board's got to think about it too, if that makes sense. Like I think we could make it workable. We'd have some maybe standard responses and stuff, but I mean, I'm happy we're talking about it, and I don't think we have to make a decision tonight either.
Yeah, I think it's about you maybe thinking about if it's a role you're willing to step into, and if it is, what capacity do you have to, and thus what ideas you have about how it might happen, because we don't want to say, oh, great, Kate, every email that comes in, make sure you write a detailed essay on the response, right? But what would be appropriate for you if you're volunteering to step into that position? And once we know that, we could formulate, as a group, we could formulate some kind of response or policy and then put it into your hands to facilitate it. So
one idea I have, and Kate, if you're interested in this, one thought I had is we don't have any open public comment, right? As a board, the only public comment we have, if you think about it, is specific to a public hearing that we open to the public, right? So one vision that we could kind of, if it works for Kate, if she's genuinely interested, is we could have a clerk position that has that automated response from the clerk directly that we all agree upon. And then we have a reporting mechanism at each meeting where the clerk sort of reports, summarizes, hey, here's a public comment we got in the last 2 weeks. Just a quick little summary. So it's a way for not to have a wide open public comment section, but to kind of acknowledge it very briefly, give the clerk 5 minutes to sort of say 10 emails. Here's here's what we heard. I responded to all, here's where we are. And it may add that public general commentary to our meetings that we currently miss.
That's a fair idea. Yeah. So, in some weeks there'd be 10 emails and some weeks there'd be none, right? Depending on what came in.
And I mean, I'm thinking, the school project, I think one day we had 150 emails or something obscene, maybe 80 or 90 emails. So obviously the clerk is not going to be able to respond to 100 of them in one day, but the clerk could make a report and say, we got 150 emails on one issue. Most of them were pro or con. And that does have some value in a public setting to kind of acknowledge, right?
Right.
So that could be part of the clerk's duties. It's just a thought that would formalize the role and give it a very limited public value so that we're not eating up a ton of time, but we're doing it in a way that we haven't done before.
And I don't think that role, if you choose to go forward with it, that role does not have to include reading the public hearings. It could be, no one actually wanted to do it.
We'll still force Peter to do that.
Even though I shut my camera off.
Yeah, Peter's like, I'm out of here.
I can still hear you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I would turn the camera off too, like just in case we point to you and say, you're going to still read it, Peter.
No, I got to move locations in my house. So I'm shutting my screen off for a second.
Okay. So we will obviously, like I said, we're going to keep these things on the agenda just as ongoing items until they're resolved or they just become a part of our routine. So the next one on there is Sustainability Committee. I think Marcelo had told me that he attended a meeting recently, and so we wanted to put an update for that, obviously, on the agenda.
Actually, I make a correction. I did tell you that was the last meeting, but Anna is the one that has been much more involved on that.
Recording
so
stopped.
I would defer to Anna for initial update. I can offer my thoughts, but I want to give Anna the.
I'll just say I just got a message that the recording has stopped on this meeting. I just want to make sure that doesn't in any way.
Well, WACA is still recording it, right?
Okay, good. Okay.
Is that right? I think Paul is there. He might be down the hall, but
we are still recording. Did you want me to stop or?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
We got a message from Zoom, I think, saying.
Yeah, I saw that pop up, but we're still going.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And so thank you, Marcelo. And what I'll say is I don't recall how many meetings we had in total. Marcelo attended a few of them. I recall, I think the subgroup of the Sustainability Committee that was focused on the net zero planning. We had multiple meetings. There's a ton of extremely thorough work where the sustainability group that worked on this took the net zero document that was passed at town meeting and then worked with language from numerous towns as well as the MAPC. The MAPC has a ton of sustainability zoning language suggestions and really planning steps to consider in making net zero happen. And we spend numerous meetings trying to narrow in a list of priorities. Basically, here's 150 ideas. What could be important in Ashland and in what priority order? That's kind of the general premise of what we did. Now we're at a point, and Marcelo attended the last meeting where a summary took place. I missed that meeting, but I'm working to connect with the subcommittee to update myself. But the general gist of the next step is we'd like to come to this board first and give the board a presentation as to what the list of priorities is to get the planning board involved in kind of where all that work has gone, and talk about how, if at all, that effort might be connected to the comprehensive plan, or in general, what the next steps might be, such as bringing the priorities to the select board, and ultimately thinking about how to move those priorities to reality. So it could be anything as simple as policy changes that make net zero and net zero initiatives kind of a question or something that we all think about when we make decisions as a planning board, or it could be far more complex, such as an actual statutory shift in our bylaws, right? That would involve a lot more complicated planning and review and drafting.
Would you say the scale of those items is going to be is a discussion between the planning board and the sustainability committee, or is it something that's going to come to us more fully formed? And
that's a really, really good question. My recollection, and Marcelo could kind of clarify too, is that the way this group, the conclusions this group reached were certain things were a priority within the next 6 months to a year, let's say. Certain things were a priority within 1 year to 3 to 5, long term. I think the thought here is to get the planning board's input on this type of yearly prioritization that has a very practical component, right? Like, you can't really do super hard things right away, immediately. That might involve a lot of process, but there are certain things, simple things we can do now that make an impact. Yet certain things that are a little bit more involved might be more important to do right away because they make a bigger impact. I think this particular group did conclude that your input as the planning board, our input, would be really important as a reaction, and Tricia, your question is a great one. And that might be the kind of question we need to explore. I don't have an answer for you because I think the answers should come from that group, not just me, so that we can figure out, is the planning board satisfied with the progress we've made? Should we kind of keep going? Is it ready for the next step, which might be a discussion with the select board? This particular group wanted to hear from the planning board some feedback.
Marcelo, do you want to add anything to that?
At
the very last meeting.
Yeah, I obviously attended the last meeting and other meeting where we discussed kind of the basic premises that they were studying. So Anna has a much more thorough view of the process they've been through. And I can just add that from the beginning, what I offered as just some other set of eyes was my experience on developing net zero projects, and I kind of put myself to try to be a devil's advocate for them to make sure that they think about other ways that this can turn, and in particular my reticence to get tied onto a single vision, a tunnel vision for a subject like energy consumption and the prioritization of objectives on arbitrary dates, because I in my experience, an net zero component and I've been, in professional capacity in groups like that. Net zero it compromises a lot of other factors, big picture, that need to be evaluated. I've mentioned my concern about implementing things that may create a detriment on affordable housing, for example, and there's other priorities. So I would favor more an approach that is more from big picture down to the details, as opposed to just setting some arbitrary dates. Oh, we have to accomplish this by then. So that's been my advice to them. And I think there's a lot of things on the list that they came up with that can be implemented actually on the short side. That would be good. So they have it's a very large list. So it's something that the planning board could evaluate and give them some commentary. I think they are very energetic about this and they want to move it forward. So it's good to if we can offer some help to do so. But yeah, that's my report. I've been just trying to let them know that from and the reality of making something net zero, it sounds great just as if it was able to be accomplished like quick or had no other implications, but it has other things that have to be considered. That's all I've added to the conversation. But Anna and that group have worked a lot more on it.
I see at least two members of the Sustainability Committee here, Matt and Margie. Do either of you want to add into the discussion, or are you just listening, or forgot you had us on in the background?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was mostly just listening. I wanted to be here in case there were any questions. I think Anna and Marcelo summarized things very well. So I just appreciate the engagement of this committee with this process. It is a long list. It's gotten shorter over time. We've removed some things that aren't as high priority, but we tried to kind of survey the whole landscape of things that we could be doing from a planning standpoint. So there was a lot to look into there. At this stage, I'm interested in sharing that work in some format with this whole committee. I don't want to make you look at everything that we looked at in the whole process of putting this together, but I want to give you kind of a high level summary and get reactions. I think that's where we're at. The Sustainability Committee is definitely enthusiastic about certain items on this list. And then I think there are some items that are on here that are best practices that we don't necessarily know the implications for. So they will require more investigation as we get further into them. I think we're open to your feedback on where you see things fitting in and what's important to you and what looks concerning to you, even from a standpoint of workload and capacity of a volunteer committee. We want to take all of that into consideration.
Is there kind of a short list of those items that you mentioned, Matt, the ones that either the committee is very enthusiastic about, or you mentioned a second group that now I can't remember how you described it, but like I guess that could be brought in front of the planning board for a reasonably timed discussion. I guess that it's a list of 6 items and we're looking at it to see which ones the planning board has ideas about or maybe would lean towards, or is that what you're thinking about as a next step? Is that I'm trying to think of what the next step is as far as involving the planning board as a whole.
And Tricia, if I could, because I've seen the list become smaller and smaller over time. I think there's kind of, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would suggest the most valuable use of time is to have Matt and Margie and myself, as appropriately, present the high level kind of like, hey, here's the themes of big picture of what we're trying to accomplish, over the next 5 years, big picture. And then, here is the top 10 items over the next year. What is the planning board's reaction to those kind of concept is what I had in mind as a presentation. I do think that a lot of that is extremely related to planning that is comprehensive in nature, meaning that if you look at all of those changes, they are so related to transportation, to affordable housing, to open space, right? To all the key components of a comprehensive plan. So one thing we may want to think about is not just like a public setting, like a planning board presentation that might be limited in time, like a 20-30 minute presentation, but also a longer, almost like a retreat session on this, if we wanted to, that would be a little bit more deep dive. But I think the planning board's reaction to the big picture 30-minute presentation is important first, before we consider what the next steps are, whether it's a retreat or what it might be. I think it's premature to just go to retreat. So the planning board might look at big picture, small picture and say, this is amazing, go right to the select board, make this happen, right? Or the planning board might say, okay, we'd like to see this in a broader context. Let's talk about how this is related to planning. Let's figure out what our capacity is, where the comprehensive plan is. Let's fit this into a larger fabric of planning. And that may require a retreat discussion. But no one is going to really know. Like, I can't guess what the whole planning board's reaction will be. As one member who attended the meetings, you know, Marcelo attended many, and that's so wonderful. But I think the two of us are not in a position to make a decision for the whole board as to what the next step is.
So the next, so you're thinking the next step would be sometime and maybe in the next 2 months, say that there would be a presentation during a planning board meeting, a presentation by the sustainability committee to the planning board as an agenda item. Is that right?
That's kind of what I had in mind. Matt and Margie, is that consistent with our discussions? I just want to make sure I'm not.
Yes. Yeah, I think that is consistent.
Okay.
I think we could give you that high level view. It's pretty much of it ready to go. I think we're just kind of making some final tweaks to it. So.
Okay. I mean, not knowing what's going to pop up on our agenda, obviously in the next few months, what new applications we might have, but still seem that's important to keep kind of moving that forward, but also being able to have a deeper understanding of it well in advance, you know, the different implications of things and the complexities. I have a feeling that the complexities may be hard to understand in small doses. So it'll be important to kind of flesh those out as best we can, I guess.
One thing I can do is I've been trying to reconnect with the group because I missed the last meeting. And one thing we could do is prepare kind of a written pre-report, if you will, that might help gauge our direction. And the other thing I'll say, you know, is that I found it to be a really educational thing as a planning board member to go through the process because it kind of shifted the way my brain now works with a project that comes before us. I started to ask deeper questions about issues of sustainability and realizing that we as a community voted, right? There was a town meeting, the town kind of voted for net zero as a goal, right? So I think it may be helpful to the board in general because it may shift, even if we don't immediately take action and make these regulatory changes. I think it can be very helpful to getting us to ask those questions that we may not be thinking of, almost like a checklist of things we should be thinking about. And then on a more kind of poignant point, you know, 2 days ago, I was reading the news that atmospheric CO2 is now at the highest level ever in human history, just this week. So, you know, the timing of this discussion is really timely and all politics are local. I think if we can have this conversation at the planning board level, that's going to be a very optimistic step in the right direction for our community to get us talking.
Why don't you just give us a heads up when that's ready to start discussing it, I guess, at this time. So we can understand what's coming up and what those things might involve.
Yeah, I would say that Matt and I are trying to pick a time to re-meet, so to speak, to kind of wrap things up, and we can use that time to prepare something written for you guys. So my hope would be maybe we can get this on the agenda, maybe not at the next planning board meeting, but the meeting right after, I guess in 4 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever that one might be, if there's room.
Yeah, and what an interesting thing is that we have 2 buildings going up right now that are in different ways, different test cases for net zero in all of its, glory and difficulty in making those things happen. So, so they might play into too those kind of experiences about how to make these things happen in an effective way, without damaging potential in other areas, I guess, as well. So
absolutely, we talked about strategically ideas such as working with the Ashland Business Association, business community leaders into kind of almost like a surveying, gauging interest in net zero, exploring how we as a community can be more engaged. That would be part of this, right? We can't just like change everything without a deep buy-in from the community, because there'll be unintentional consequences to a lot of this stuff. So you're right, Trisha. It's a very, very deep, complex issue, which is why I think high level, short presentation, and then sort of like, okay, what's the capacity of this board? What's our interest level? How do we see this coming forward? Is important, right? Because if we do want to make net zero happen, let's say 1, 2, 3, 5 years down the line, and this kind of thoughtful plan, it's not going to happen unless this board is ready, we have capacity, we have some strategy, and we understand what we're doing and how it relates to planning.
All right. Yeah, so just let us know, preferably a little in advance, given the way our agendas tend to look, so we can make sure we have a good time to put that in.
I'll try to do it as soon as possible, like a week or two. So we'll try to wrap it up, because I know Matt and Margie and the rest of the committee, as well as Marcelo, there's a lot of effort, and we're going to try to wrap it all up as quickly as we can.
Okay, great. All right. Next item is Design Review Committee. This I see Kathy Rooney on here, so if she wants to jump in, she certainly can. This is just, I think Kevin mentioned a few meetings ago, just about making sure we keep a few things, these type of things on the agenda. And obviously they're important, and it's easy to lose track of them in all the public hearings we're doing. So Kathy, I think the last and not to put you on the spot, because you probably didn't come onto the meeting for this purpose, but you had given us some documents with different bylaws. I had returned kind of an edited document to you, but I know you're obviously super busy, as we all are having trouble finding spare minutes in our calendars. So it's just an opportunity for you to say kind of where you are with this, and what the Design Review Committee would appreciate next from the planning board.
We actually are in, I think that's the answer to that question is going to be in some minutes that we owe. I just got a list from Emma tonight. She's looking for some minutes, and Bill, who's been doing them, is either has them and hasn't sent them in, or is working on them. So I know we got one document from you, but we didn't get anything back about the others. I don't think. We only got one. So I'm curious where you are with the others. And then I'm also curious, and I think this might also be in one of our meeting minutes, if you got a second letter from us about the patio standards you asked us to work on. Oh, I'm going to guess 2 or 3 months ago now. When TJ's patio was getting discussed.
Yeah, I think we had kind of a bullet point list of things that we thought should be on that list. I think we're just kind of throwing it to you to see if there's anything you wanted to add, or
we don't have it from you yet.
Oh, okay. It was in a memo that Peter had constructed, so even for our purposes, so it would be easy to put over there. I don't think it was meant to be a exact task, or that it's already, the memo has been done for months and months. So
well, we put something together, and I think we sent it to you, and then we had a discussion about it, and I'm not sure if we sent you a second thing. And I don't remember if I saw a memo.
Okay, well, let me check. Let me check with Peter. So that's one thing we're looking at with the Design Review Committee is outdoor seating, because we did have our bullet point list of things we looked at with TJ's, and it wasn't a definitive list. It was just things that had come up in our process. And then there were the bylaw changes. I know you had several documents. It's the long one that I'm thinking of that I had done a lot of edits to and sent back.
We actually, yeah, I think that's coming back to you all, because we worked on that.
Okay.
So I'd have to go back through, and we're gonna have a meeting next week, and
Okay.
we'll discuss it. Hopefully we don't have so many public comments about both of the big projects that will be in a meeting where we can't, keep going.
Yeah, and not meaning to put pressure on you as well. It's just checking in. That's all.
Absolutely. Well, I want to keep these projects moving, and this is how we need to do it. So
We do, but something has to give on all of our schedules. Something has to give. So,
well, that's actually one of our questions we've been asking is like, how can we make this project a little more reasonable, literally for all of us? Because it seems to me that we're sometimes fast tracking stuff because we're on the developer schedule as opposed to on our schedule, and also allowing for some time to elapse between when we first look at a project or we get a second look at basically new redone documents for a project. And I don't know about you all, but I know I'm one of several people on my committee where people are, stuff starts percolating and they have additional comments about initial comments, like let's say to siding or landscaping for me or other things that they want to say, but they couldn't say them in the first meeting. And we might be not even have a chance to get all that stuff discussed before we need to make a report to you all or a developer. We may have to figure out a way to stretch some of this time frame out, legally, so all of our committees get a chance to thoughtfully look at these projects and discuss them. And that's just feedback from us right now in general, because we don't really have any ideas about how to do it. And I know there's definitely a timeline that starts when an applicant comes in with a project, and the idea is to get them to ask to do the continuance. But even so, I'm wondering if there's a way we can increase the length of time before we have to flip it back to them.
yeah, I mean, that was looking at to be part of the bylaw edits, I think, when we get there, because I agree that timeline was strange and just not working. Maybe in different ways. I might be thinking about it in a different way that you guys are thinking about it, but in general, it's just not very effective. But okay, so all those things, again, we're not going into anything in depth tonight here. We're just trying to touch base on various items. So I have those things noted. We will make sure that you get kind of the notes on the outdoor seating, and then we'll be looking for your edits when you have them on the bylaw. We'll go back and forth with that a little bit.
And do we have a concurrent meeting or retreat on June 29th?
I think that was the potential date that was working out most. Is that right?
That is correct. June 29th is the date that everyone kind of got back and confirmed.
So it'd be good to get something out there, just to make sure that if that date is set, to make sure that it's out there and on everyone's calendars, at least whoever can make it.
Okay.
So that's a daytime meeting or what? Because it's a Wednesday and I book.
It's usually an evening meeting. So.
And when would that be?
We usually do them from like 5:30 to 7:30. 5 to 7, is that what you're saying, Peter?
We only do like 2 hours.
We get pretty burnt out by that time. So we're also very busy on the planning board.
We're already doing 4-hour meetings if people are attending them. So, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to check. We'll have to check with the members of the committee and see who's available to come.
Okay. Yep, sounds good. I think it was a doodle poll, right, Peter? And that was the date that we landed on. So the planning board also has a meeting on the 27th in the evening, and gosh, I hope we don't have a planning board meeting.
That poll went out to everybody, my committee and yours, because I remember a doodle poll like a while ago.
It was a while ago.
So Tricia, my calendar shows planning board meeting on the 23rd of June. And then the retreat with, I don't know if it's a retreat, no, regular meeting with the select board, the 27th. And then our retreat on the 29th.
Right.
Yep.
So it does look like we already wrapped up the scheduling of all three.
Okay. Good, then that is what it is. So yeah, Peter, if that was, if that's a joint meeting, then we have to make sure that, just it gets on everybody's.
Yeah, we'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, we're not necessarily going through all these tonight, so if there is no big update, we do not have to do it. It's just checking in. But given that we had some people here from the Sustainability Committee and the Design Review Committee, I wanted to touch base on those. Comprehensive plan, obviously, we're meeting on the 27th with the Select Board about comprehensive plan. Anna, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or?
I think I had indicated to Tricia that the meeting with the Select Board had a meeting where they discussed our letter. I did attend that meeting, and the some of the concerns the Select Board raised, and of course everyone is welcome to listen to that particular meeting, were an understanding of the interconnection between a comprehensive plan and the town manager's strategic plan, which has been worked on for some time. And I think the Select Board wishes to understand better what we have in mind, how the two pieces are interconnected. That was at least the way I interpreted some of the discussion pieces. So the meeting with the Select Board is meant to flush out kind of what our thinking is and how we envision this working.
Okay. Yeah, fair. I think that's the best forum to do it in, when we have as many voices in there as possible. Everyone's hearing the same information, and hopefully we can get on try to get on the same page as quickly as possible.
What time is that meeting?
That's at 7 p.m., Kathy.
That's a 2-hour meeting?
I'm hoping.
Okay.
Peter,
Thank
do
you.
you recall if that's in person or virtual?
A virtual, yeah. I believe, don't quote, I would bet I would put money it's a virtual meeting.
No, which is good for me because I will be out of town again, starting next Thursday for 2 weeks. So I won't be back to the 30th. I'll be back in Iowa. So whatever it is, I will be appearing virtually.
Yeah, it's going to be a virtual.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else on comprehensive plan, inclusionary zoning, I really don't have anything to report there. Obviously, that's a longer term thing. We haven't met about it again. Everyone's schedule has been so filled with everything else. CPC, that's mine too. We've had a few meetings. I'm just kind of just learning how CPC works, and starting to understand how there could be connections between my role on the planning board and CPC, like how I do it. It's more just my own notions about how the boards could and should be working together, opportunities or problems for one board becoming opportunities for another board. And how do we start to work together, in that way. So, but otherwise not very much have come before the CPC in terms of people asking for funding. So it's like there's money out there, but it doesn't have a place to go yet. It just sits there nicely in an account. So there's no worry about it going away.
Can I ask, can that money be used for comprehensive plan? Peter's shaking his head no.
I doubt it. Yeah, there's pretty strict.
My head no too.
Yeah, no,
There's pretty strict boundaries about how it can be used, but I am not up to speed yet to know exactly where those boundaries are. I've just seen things come in and people say, nope, doesn't fit, can't give the money. So
yeah, there's of CPA, there's 3 pillars: open space, there's recreation, open space, recreation, historical preservation, and affordable housing. And so typically all monies spent have to hit one of those 3 principles. And
kind of from my limited experience, kind of squarely on the target, not if it goes too much of a tangent on it, it doesn't typically fly.
There's a little bit of wiggle room, and
yeah.
I've dealt with this in the past, but typically like Tricia said, it's gonna nail one of those three down pretty hard.
Yeah. But if it's under those categories, there's some money there,
The
so.
biggest wiggle room sometimes we find is within historical preservation. However, that gets into, there's been a lot of court cases actually talking about private entities such as churches requesting CPA funds and communities granting CPA funds for restoration. So, which are fairly interesting. But yeah, that's the only place I see a little bit of wiggle room.
Right. So that's where that is. The next item I put on scenic roads outreach, because we had talked many moons ago about maybe getting some kind of public information letter out there to people who lived on scenic roads, maybe especially in different times of year when people might be thinking about tree trimming, and just making them aware what the regulations for scenic roads are. So that might be, I don't know how, it's just something we've been talking about doing, and maybe we're able to take, maybe me working with Peter to understand what the next step would be. I think it's just a letter. It gets mailed along those scenic roads to try to let people have the information that they might not have. I don't think there's a better way of reaching them besides mail, because you hit every mailbox.
Yeah, and you know what, for this one, our past sustainability manager friend Nick Cashy, he put together a draft little flyer.
Oh, okay.
So I have something to work off of, and I think bringing it back up to the front of the radar would be good. And I think at this point, with the communications person at Town Hall, Ashley Place, maybe something she could help us out on and help me out on to put together something in the weekly newsletter and or some sort of informational package. But I think that's what I can say.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone feel free to jump in if they have anything to say on these topics.
I'll take the next one, Tricia.
Yeah,
Odessa.
please. Yep.
Odessa, obviously this goes a couple months back. It was a car carrier facility, and there's a car storage facility owned by Odessa, which is a car auction up in Framingham at the old GE plant. Odessa was looking to build a fairly large parking lot in Holliston. It went back and forth, the planning board, I believe. However, I can state that doing a little research, the Holliston Planning Board, it looks like they denied the application for Odessa on April 28th of 2022. We've reached out to see if we can get a copy of decision. I don't know if a decision has been rendered at this point, but from my understanding and my research is that Odessa, who filed for the application regarding development, I believe is about 500 parking spots over in Holliston, has been denied. That was the vote. Like I said, it's still within that 90-day period, so I don't know if a decision has been rendered yet, but I would say we're staying tuned for that one. And obviously I'll keep the planning board abreast as information comes in.
All right. Great.
MBTA communities, I'll take that one as well. We are in compliance. All information has been submitted to the state. Public comments were due, I believe, back May 1st. But at this point, all towns, just like Ashland, we're waiting on revised guidelines. And so I think looking at the state website, looking at the MBTA website, those were due this summer. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern. So I would expect revised guidelines sometime in July or August regarding the MBTA zoning. So like I said, we're in a holding pattern, but we are in compliance. But we are with every other community waiting to see what the revised guidelines are.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Peter, we're in compliance because our zoning meets what the draft requirements are?
Nope.
What kind of compliance are you talking about?
So we are in compliance. So within the guidelines, which goes back to the state legislation, all communities had to have a public forum and present the draft guidelines to the select board by, I believe, May 1st. And that had to have happened. So the town of Ashland, we have gone, we have presented the bylaws, what the theory is, the principles behind the legislation, and what may be coming down the pipe, what's going to be happening in the future in relationship to the guidelines, the state legislation. So for the town to stay, or the town to be eligible and or to be in, to be in conformance with the legislation, all the town had to do was present it to the select board. And we have talked about it, but the planning board has discussed it. The select board has discussed it. Both boards have sent letters in regards to the draft guidelines back from the Department of Housing and Community Development. All other towns had to do the same as Ashland, and so there was public listening sessions, public informational sessions on the MBTA zoning, but we have certified ourselves that we have presented in front of the select board, and we are in compliance.
Cool. All right. Any other questions? Were you going to add to that, Peter?
Nope.
Okay. I'm just looking at the next section then. At the only item on here, unless we have other applications that I don't know about, would be the date for the zoning forum. I think we covered everything else.
Yeah, so the date for the zoning forum, working with Emma, we've nailed down the date of June 22nd at 5:30 p.m. And so that is the date that Emma and I are going to publish. Works for both our schedules. It is a Wednesday night, which obviously everyone knows Emma and I work late on Wednesday nights. But I thought that would be the most appropriate time. And then obviously 5:30 is after work. So if any planning board member would like to join, however, this is a request from the public. And so hopefully the public will attend. Myself and Emma, planning staff, are putting together a PowerPoint reviewing the downtown zoning. That is my update on that one.
And Peter, you'll send us the date and the details?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Can I ask a question? I thought of bringing it up during the scenic route thing. Remember that tree from last year? You were going to look into it, the planting of the tree. Any update on that?
So I've talked to Roy Carrera, who's our superintendent. He was actually out on vacation about a week ago. Him and I are coming up with a couple of things. We're going over scenic roads. There's a couple of trees that need to be come down. However, right now the budget for trees is very low. And so with the new fiscal year upon us, we're going to have to wait at least till the end of this month before that tree gets replaced. So we're looking for the new fiscal budget, and then we'll be able to address that issue.
So you're thinking like this year, but not this month?
Not this month, because we're looking to fiscal year 2023 starts at July 1. And so once July 1 hits, budgets are replenished.
Yep.
So hopefully in the fall, when the fall planting season, we'll be able to get a tree implemented out there. Obviously, I don't want to put one in midsummer. We don't want to put one in midsummer. It's probably the best to give the tree the most highest percentile.
Yep.
Obviously, you have your spring and your summer, your spring and your fall planting seasons, and so we'll try to put that in the fall. But it's
I have a question about that public forum. So that's not a lot of notice. Like, what kind of publicity are we gonna do? Because I know it's a request from the public, but like, and I think the person that requested it is on, and I think takes very seriously, like trying to rally people. But I believe that should be a kind of collective effort to try to get people there. And I mean, it is a little disappointing, the amount of notice. It's like people have been waiting for this season to get, their graduations, their retirement parties, all that stuff. But
I'm happy to move it until July.
I don't know that July is better. I'm just asking. I mean, if we do nothing, I think that's a failure of the board to try to help publicize this.
Oh, I think
So I have a flyer. So I've already made a flyer. We're gonna put it out on Facebook and put it out and we're gonna start advertising it, and then that's what we're gonna do. I think the request came back to the planning staff, the planning office, and I think that's the date that works for us and works for our schedule. We just talked about having 3 meetings coming up in the next 2 weeks, and to be able to fit this meeting in is obviously a lift. The public has attended 2 public hearings for the 10 to 50 Main Street. There's a lot of meetings going on. I understand that. But in my eyes, I think we're doing the best we can to make this happen and to listen to the requests of the public. This will be videotaped and obviously it can be aired and posted on our website as well, if it can fit into someone's schedule. If I hear the feedback that people aren't able to attend due to the scheduling, I'm happy to postpone to a different time and a different time.
If Helen is on, Helen, are you there in the background? Do you want to?
Hi. Yeah. Well, the only thing I'm thinking, I haven't really, because I just heard the date, had a lot of time to think about it, but I'm thinking 5:30 might be a little early. Not everyone's home from work at 5:30. That was my only first thought that came to my mind.
Do you think that having like on the 22nd, Wednesdays are a big thing because if we're having them in the evenings, we're trying to get where staff are working in the evenings, otherwise they're not there.
Yeah, I guess for me, June is a busy month. I also think July is difficult because a lot of people are away. I don't really know. I haven't had time to think about this. I just personally thought the 5:30 thing seemed early because, like I said, a lot of people aren't home from work yet at 5:30, and that's really all I've had time to kind of consider at this point.
I'm happy to move it to 6, but obviously, town hall, from a staffing perspective, I think 6 is probably the latest I could go and dedicate 60 minutes, an hour to this. I think at 5:30, my perspective was, we could do an hour or 45-minute presentation and maybe 45 minutes for conversation, 5:30 to 7. But I'm happy to do a half-hour presentation and then leave another half hour open for public comment, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, I think the zoning, the downtown zoning is very complicated and very confusing. I know even on the public, not the public, but the retreat that I sat in on February seemed like even you guys had questions. So, as in-depth as you can get, probably would be good, and then time for questions.
Can we, is there any other publicity besides Facebook? Is it I don't know how many seniors, and I don't know how active the senior center is right now because of COVID, but I think people are going back in the library.
I'm happy to put flyers out at all those locations.
Yeah, I agree. I do think flyers are a good idea. Facebook is great, and I do think that you get people on Facebook, but I also think that there's a lot of people that aren't on Facebook. And I notice Holliston, just because I go to the Superette, all their public meetings and town meetings and voting ballots are all posted there so people can see them. And it's a place that a lot of people go. So, if something could get posted in places, maybe that would be nice too.
That will be taken care of. We're going to nail down the date this week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So at this point, we're still looking at June 27th. That maybe at 6 o'clock to push it a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm happy to push it to 6 o'clock. I think town hall stays open till 7 on Wednesdays, and obviously if we run a little late, I would want to start at any time past 6.
Okay. I think that's fair enough. And like you said, it's recorded for anyone who misses it. They can still gain all the information.
Yeah.
At any time.
And I'm always happy to talk to people, if anybody has any questions about the zoning. I'm in the office and on the phone call or email or a cup of coffee away. So.
All right. Peter, is there anything we need to go through with any applications received or?
I have no new applications at this point.
And then is there any update on the virtual public meeting extension?
I do have an update. So there's the right now within the budget, within the, which is right now in front of the Senate and is being discussed by the Senate. I understand that there's an extension to the public meeting that will allow cities and towns to use Zoom meetings like we're on, moving forward until December of 2023.
And that's already been decided, you say, or is it just?
It's within the budget. So once the budget's voted by the Senate, and obviously and goes back to the House of Representatives, but within that package, the budget package, there is an extension of the public meetings to continue until December 2023.
Okay.
So we're looking at another 18 months of Zoom meetings for a planning board, if that's what the planning board decides to do.
Okay. But it's our choice if we want to. We're free to continue on Zoom. If we decide to go in person or hybrid, we can make that decision as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's my.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, I think we just have 2 sets of meeting minutes. Did those go out?
You know what? I don't think those went out. I'm sorry.
I went to look for them and then I didn't see them. So
Yeah,
no,
couldn't find
those
them.
didn't go out. That's our fault in the office. So
everyone's sad. Marcelo looks sad. Kevin looks sad.
yeah. I'll get those out right away.
Okay.
I think I have a slight OCD because when I see them and I can't find them, I'm like, oh my God.
It's probably at our end. No,
where are they?
we were juggling a lot of. Last week was a funky week, so but no, we'll get those out as soon as possible on the next agenda.
Yeah, and just to remind people, I think the 27th one was when we were really finalizing TJs on March 17th. We were finalizing the TJ's decision, and I think the April 28th one was the joint meeting with the design review committee. So those have been those are my notes anyway.
Yeah,
so
the 17th was a lengthy meeting.
Yeah,
I do have those.
Yeah. So, okay. Anything else any other comments from anyone? We've gone through a lot. I appreciate everyone's patience with that list. Those are all things that were hanging out there. So it's nice to get through them and have a status report at least. All right.
Awesome.
Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
And a roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Passengers, a guy.
McLean, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So thank you, everyone. And we will see you, I don't know, whatever meeting is coming up next that we need to be at.
23rd.
23rd.
Yeah. I'll send out a memo outlining the dates and go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks,
You
Peter.
too. Good night.
Bye, guys.